go to bed perfectly healthy. By morning, you have a burning fever. Dark, painful swellings rise from your neck and arms. Your skin turns black, and within 48 hours, you are dead. Now imagine that happening to your neighbors, then your street, then your entire city. No medicine, no explanation, no escape. In just 5 years, half of Europe disappeared. This is not fiction. This is not legend. This is the true story of the Black Death, the deadliest disaster in human history. And once it began, the world would never be the same again. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going back to the 14th century, to a time when civilization itself nearly collapsed. We'll trace the plague from its mysterious origins to its explosion across Europe, to the chaos, fear, and transformation it left behind. This is more than history. It is a warning from the past. Let's begin. A world at its peak. To understand how devastating the Black Death was, you must first understand the world it destroyed. The early 1300s were not dark and miserable as many imagine. Europe was thriving. Thanks to a long period of warm climate called the medieval warm period, harvests had been good for generations, food was plentiful, trade was booming, cities were growing fast. Paris, London, Florence and Venice were crowded, wealthy, energetic centers of culture and commerce. Gothic cathedrals stretched toward the sky, universities were flourishing, merchants were becoming rich. Most importantly, the world was more connected than ever before. Thanks to the Mongol Empire and the Pax Mongolica, trade routes stretched safely from China to the Mediterranean. Silk, spices, gold and ideas flowed freely across continents. It was the medieval version of globalization, but that same connection would soon become Europe's death sentence. Because something was traveling along those trade routes, something invisible, something unstoppable, the hidden enemy. Thousands of miles away in the grasslands of Central Asia, a silent killer had existed for centuries, a tiny bacterium called Yersinia pestis. It lived quietly among rodents, marmots, rats and ground squirrels. For generations it stayed there, harming only animals. But in the 1330s something changed. Climate shifts, droughts and ecological disruption pushed infected rodents closer to human settlements. Fleas jumped from animals to people, and the disease made its deadly leap into the human world. The first victims didn't understand what was happening. They developed violent fevers, vomiting, chills, and horrifying swollen lumps called buboes. Almost no one survived. At first it seemed like a local disaster, but the Silk Road carried more than silk. It carried death. Rumors from the east. By the early 1340s, strange stories reached Europe. Merchants spoke of entire towns in Asia, suddenly wiped out. Travelers whispered about cities where the streets were filled with corpses. Some said it was God's punishment. Others said it was poison in the air. Europeans listened with curiosity, but no real fear. After all, these tragedies were far away. What they didn't realize was this: the same ships bringing them spices and treasures were also bringing their executioner. The turning point came in a city called Caffa on the Crimean Peninsula, the siege that changed history. In 1346, the city of Caffa was under siege. It was a wealthy trading colony controlled by Genoese merchants from Italy. Outside the walls stood the army of the Mongol Golden Horde. The siege dragged on for months. Then suddenly something strange happened. The Mongol soldiers began dying, not from arrows or swords, but from a mysterious illness. One by one they collapsed with blackened skin and swollen bodies. Desperate and furious, the Mongol leader made a horrifying decision. He ordered the corpses of plague victims to be loaded into catapults and launched them over the walls of Caffa. Dead bodies rained down into the city. It was one of the first known acts of biological warfare. Soon the people inside the city began getting sick too. The Genoese realized the city was doomed, so they fled, and they carried the plague with them. Death arrives in Europe. In 1347, Genoese ships arrived at the port of Messina in Sicily. Dockworkers rushed to greet them. What they found was a nightmare. Most sailors were already dead. Others were covered in black boils, delirious and dying. The ships were ordered to leave immediately, but it was too late. Rats and fleas had already climbed onto the docks. Within weeks, Messina was drowning in death. From there, the plague spread like wildfire to Genoa, to Venice, to Marseille, to Barcelona. By 1348, it had reached Paris, then London, then all of Europe. No border could stop it. No army could fight it. The medieval world was completely unprepared, a civilization in panic. Doctors had no idea what they were facing. They believed disease came from bad air or punishment from God. Some recommended burning herbs. Others said to avoid bathing. Many advised prayer and bloodletting. Nothing worked. The mortality rate was terrifying. 60%, sometimes entire towns, 100%. People abandoned their families. Parents fled from sick children. Priests refused to give last rites. Giovanni Boccaccio, an Italian writer, described Florence as a city where the living were hardly enough to bury the dead. Graveyards overflowed. Mass burial pits were dug. Carts rolled through streets calling out, "Bring out your dead." Life itself seemed to be ending. Religion, fear, and hysteria. In a deeply religious world, people searched desperately for meaning. Many believed it was the apocalypse. Radical religious movements appeared. The flagellants marched through towns, whipping themselves, begging God for mercy. But fear soon turned to hatred. Rumors spread that Jewish communities had poisoned wells. Across Europe, mobs attacked and murdered thousands of innocent people. Entire Jewish neighborhoods were burned. The plague didn't just destroy bodies, it destroyed morality. It revealed the darkest side of human nature, the collapse of society. In the countryside, the effects were just as brutal. Farmers died in their fields, crops were left to rot, animals wandered without owners. Whole villages vanished from history. By 1351, the first wave finally burned out, not because it was defeated, but because it ran out of people to kill. When the dust settled, Europe was unrecognizable. A new world rises from ashes. Historians estimate that between 75 and 200 million people died worldwide. Up to half of Europe's population was gone, but something unexpected happened next. With so many dead, labor became incredibly valuable. Peasants could demand higher wages. Serfdom began to collapse. Social mobility increased. The power of the old feudal system weakened. In a strange way, the plague helped pave the road to the Renaissance and the modern world. Out of catastrophe came transformation. The lesson for today. For centuries, the Black Death felt like ancient history, a medieval nightmare that could never happen again. But think about it. Empty streets, locked homes, fear of invisible disease. Does that sound so distant? History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes, and the Black Death remains one of the clearest reminders that civilization is more fragile than we like to believe. If this story shocked you, imagine how many more forgotten histories are waiting to be uncovered. On this channel, we bring the past back to life, not as dusty dates, but as powerful stories that shape who we are today. So if you love deep history documentaries like this, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode, because the past is never really gone. I'm Tim, watching the past so we can understand the present, and together we keep history reborn. I'll see you in the next era. Word count